Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're going to talk a bit about news and news production tonight. Okay, the first thing we'll be thinking about is the mass broadcasting of news throughout the United States. This is where I have most of my experience. This started perhaps around the year 1920 with the advent of radio, and then later the advent of television, and today the advent of internet. Okay, so let's go back a bit to 1920. One of the first radio stations that broadcast the news was KDKA, and I believe they were out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay. And then we had multiple radio stations all over the United States: New York, New York City, Miami, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle would broadcast news on radio throughout the United States and eventually throughout the world. Talk about the world in a few moments. I can remember many years ago we had something called World Band Radio, which you could buy these radios. They're fairly expensive in those days, and listen to news broadcasts from all over the world. Now, the downside would be that, okay, you're listening to Radio Havana, for instance, out of Cuba. Well, it's all in Spanish. So, unless you know Spanish, you don't know what they're saying. Thankfully, in many countries, they have radio stations that broadcast in English and only English, so expats or et cetera, can understand what's going on. Okay, because if you're expating in a country on a limited amount of time, then you're not going to be learning the language. So you're missing out on a lot. So, for instance, in Bangkok, Thailand, they have a radio station that broadcasts 24 hours in English. This is a great thing. Okay, and we're talking news broadcasts. Okay. All right. Now, in regard to television, that's a whole different story. We can go back to the early days of television, the late 1940s, and we had only three networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And these networks each had their broadcasting capabilities. And there was a lot of controversy here because a lot of what they were broadcasting seemed the same. A lot of it seemed opinionated. For instance, NBC and CBS seemed to be like liberal, and ABC seemed to be a bit more conservative. But to tell you the truth, none of them were very different. It seemed like an oligopoly of three sources of news, and that was it. So a lot of people were unhappy with that. CNN came about much later. Um, I can't give an exact date. I'm sorry. I would suspect about the mid to late 70s. CNN came about with Mr. Ted Turner. So we had somewhat of an alternative, typically a bit more conservative. To me, not particularly impressive. The real revolution in news broadcasting came with the advent of the internet, where we have Yahoo News, we have CNN Online, we got BBC, we got Al Jazeera out of the Middle East, we've got various stations coming out of um, Asia. Something we'll go back in time for was what we call pirate radio stations back in the 1960s. Again, as a revolt against monopolized and certainly oligopolized news, ABC, CBS, NBC, we had radio stations, and the BBC, which is also a monopoly in the UK. We had radio stations off the coast of Florida and off the coast of the UK, which were on boats. And you could listen to all kind of things that you never hear on BBC, NBC, ABC, CBS. Sadly, those were repressed and put down for whatever reason in the UK and certainly in the USA. We had something called Radio Free America in the USA. We had Radio Free Europe in Europe. I'm not current on pirate radio stations today. I would think with the internet, we wouldn't have much in the way of broadcasting from boats. I don't really know. Okay. But the internet has been a true revolution. Everybody can be their own newsman. Everybody can be their own news agency. You can use your own prejudices or your lack of prejudices. Whether you're going to make money at it or not, well, that's a whole other story. Okay. So that concludes what I have to say today about news topics and news media and progress and even regress. I hope you have a great day and I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much.